great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to earth, and his angels with him. Before the creation of the world, God created a host of angels to serve and worship him in heaven. Among these angels was one of great beauty and wisdom, known as Lucifer. Lucifer was adorned with a radiant light and was considered to be the morning star, a symbol of his brilliance. He held the highest of positions among the angels and was filled with great wisdom and knowledge. However, within Lucifer, pride began to take root. As time went on, Lucifer's pride grew to the point where he desired to be equal to, or even surpass God in power and authority. With his pride and a lust for power in his heart, he rebelled against God, gathering a group of angels who shared his sentiments. With his followers, Lucifer plotted to overthrow God and establish his own dominion. "I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself the Most High." God, who sees and knows all, saw the rebellion within Lucifer's heart. In response, he cast Lucifer and his followers out of heaven, forever separating them from his divine presence. They were banished to a realm known as Hell, or the Abyss. After his fall, Lucifer became known as Satan, or the devil. He became the embodiment of evil, constantly seeking to oppose God's plans and leading humanity astray. The devil's purpose is to tempt humans into sin and rebellion against God, sowing discord and chaos in the world. According to biblical teachings, the devil and his minions continue to operate in the world, seeking to deceive and corrupt humanity. However, the ultimate defeat of the devil is through our promised salvation and redemption made available to all who believe, breaking his power of sin and evil over our lives. Representation of the devil has been portrayed in many different ways across cultures and religions throughout history. In Christianity, the devil is referred to as Satan or Lucifer and is seen as a fallen angel who tempts humans away from God. Other religions also depict the devil as a powerful force that acts against good. For example, the figure of the devil can also be found in other mythologies such as Norse mythology, where he is known as Loki or Fenrir. In Hinduism, he's known as Ravana, and Buddhism, where Mara serves in a similar role. In some Native American cultures, he is believed to be a trickster figure who uses his cunning to deceive people and lead them into making bad decisions. In Islam, the devil is known as Iblis or Shaitan. He's believed to be a jinn, where in English we get our word genie from. A supernatural creature made of smokeless fire who refused to bow down to Adam when God commanded all angels and jinn to do so. Iblis is considered the enemy of humanity, constantly trying to lead people astray from the path of righteousness. He is portrayed as a deceiver who tempts humans to commit sins and disbelieve in God. However, unlike in Christianity, Iblis does not have the same level of power and influence over the world. In Islam, humans are ultimately responsible for their own actions and are not considered inherently sinful due to the influence of the devil. Muslims believe that their salvation lies in combating the temptations of Satan. The Quran contains numerous verses detailing the struggle and provides guidance for those who wish to fight against evil. Verse 35, chapter 8 states that those who disbelieve spend their wealth to hinder man from the way of Allah. They will spend it, then it will be for them a regret. Then they will be overcome, and those who disbelieve will be gathered unto hell. This verse illustrates how giving in to temptation leads to eternal damnation, so believers must remain vigilant against any efforts by Satan or his followers to lead them astray. The Talmud, the Jewish religious book, includes several verses about battling Satan. One of them is Proverbs 16:27, which states, "A scoundrel plans evil, and his words are like the scorching fire." Other verses in the Talmud include Isaiah 5:20-22, which says, "Woe to those who call what is bad good, and what is good bad, who turn darkness into light, and light into darkness, who turn bitter into sweet, and sweet into bitter. All of these verses serve as a powerful reminder to stay vigilant and not fall prey to the temptations of Satan. Evil may have been temporarily defeated when God sent Satan and all of his followers out of heaven down to hell, but that was just a setback. The war between good and evil continues to this day, and will continue on for all of our days. Satan works tirelessly to create evil in our world and get his revenge on God through the corruption of his work. We are cautioned to be vigilant against all forms of evil. One moment of weakness or of pride, greed, envy, or lust, and the door is cast open for Satan to work his way inside. One such story happened in Washington, D.C. in 1973. Now I know what you're thinking. Satan never really left D.C. He's just exhausted from training all those politicians. But this story is about one of the few innocent people in our nation's capital, a little girl named Reagan McNeil. This is the story of her possession and ultimate salvation from the devil's grasp. This is the story of 1973's The Exorcist.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
The Exorcist is a chilling horror film released in 1973, directed by William Friedkin, and based on the novel of the same name by William Peter Blatty. Known for its unsettling and intense portrayal of demonic possession, the movie follows an ordeal of a young girl and the battle between good and evil that unfolds in the process. The movie is set in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. Father Damien Karras, played by Jason Miller, a Catholic priest struggling with his faith and personal demons, is introduced as really the central character, besides Reagan. Meanwhile, Chris McNeil, played by Ellen Burstyn, is a successful actress, and her 12-year-old daughter, Reagan, played by Linda Blair, live in a seemingly normal and content life. However, strange occurrences begin to disrupt their tranquility. Reagan starts exhibiting odd behavior, marked by extreme changes in her personality, obscene language, and physical manifestations. Convinced that her daughter is suffering from a psychological disorder, Chris consults with various medical professionals, but their tests and treatments prove futile. Medical test after medical test come back showing nothing. Desperate for answers, she eventually turns to the church for help. Father Karras, a psychiatrist as well as a priest, receives Reagan's case. He initially approaches it from a medical or psychological standpoint, trying to explain her condition through scientific means. At the same time, Father Karras is dealing with the traumatic loss of his mother. He is overwhelmed with guilt and grief. I'm mentioning this now because his guilt and grief will become tools for the devil later. As the events escalate and become increasingly inexplicable, Karras begins to consider the possibility of a demonic possession. At that point in history, even in the early 1970s, the thought of possession and exorcisms were unheard of in society and even in the church. Through modern medicine and science, a lot of the so-called possessions were explained away through medical reasons. As a matter of fact, the producers of this movie were worried that any potential audience for this movie wouldn't know what an exorcist or an exorcism is. After consulting with more experienced clergy members, Karras seeks permission to perform an exorcism on Reagan. The church calls upon Father Marin, played by Brewmeister Smith, a renowned exorcist. He's called upon to lead Karras through this daunting task. Together, they prepare to confront the malevolent force that has taken hold of this young girl. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places.
That the power of Christ compels you!
The exorcism itself becomes an intense and terrifying battle between the priests and the demonic entity possessing Regan. Regan's body contorts, her voice changes. She displays an extraordinary strength while hurling vile insults and threats at her would-be saviors. As the exorcism progresses, Karras, haunted by his own guilt and lack of faith, faces an internal struggle against the forces of evil. It is then that the demon reveals its true purpose. One might wonder, why would the devil target some innocent little girl? It's not. It's using Regan. It's using her to get to Father Karras.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
You'd like that?
Intensely.
But wouldn't that drive you out of Reagan?
It would bring us together.
You and Reagan?
You and us.
Father Karras is a much more valuable prize to Satan. A fallen priest, weakened by his grief, doubt, and pain, which has led to a lack of faith in Christ. Both priests, Karras and Merrin, find themselves battling not only the demonic presence within Regan, but also their own inner demons. Father Karras is overwhelmed and incapacitated by his own doubts and lack of faith in the face of ultimate evil.
Είσαι πολύ κουρασμένος. Να πας στο κρεβάτι σου.
You're not my mother! Don't listen.
Why, Timmy?
Damien!
Timmy, please.
Father Merrin sends him outside to recover, knowing that his weakness, understandable in a sympathetic sense, would be used as a tool by the devil. Father Merrin re-enters the battle alone, while Father Karras recovers, physically and spiritually. Father Merrin makes the ultimate sacrifice to save Regan's soul, and dies in an attempt to free her. In the aftermath of this death, Father Karras, exhausted and broken, is overcome with anger, guilt, and torment, and physically attacks Regan. Summoning his dwindling strength, he confronts the demon with his own darkness and allows the demon to leave Regan and possess himself. But with his last bit of strength, he makes the ultimate decision. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. Father Karras hurls himself out of Regan's window, sacrificing his own life to save her. Once again, the devil's plan has been defeated, though at a great cost. The loss of Father Merrin, the loss of Father Karras, and the torment and scarring of young Regan and her mother. The movie ends with a sense of dread rather than a sense of triumph. Unlike mortal beings whose defeat would bring a sense of relief, there is a lingering sense that the devil will always be working on his next plan, and the fight will never end. Our vigilance is the price we pay to save the soul of the next Regan or the next Father Karras. The Exorcist delves into themes of faith, redemption, and the struggle between good and evil. It really shocked audiences upon its release with its realistic and graphic portrayal of possession, leaving a lasting impact on the horror genre. The film's powerful performances, atmospheric direction, and deeply unsettling imagery continue to make it a revered and influential classic in the realm of horror and cinema in general. As with most films, especially those of that era, a lot of interesting things happen on the way to making such a great movie. Films depicting violence often receive the scorn of certain audience members. Films depicting children in adult situations receive even more scorn. Films depicting religion in any light, positive or negative, can also expect criticism. With that being said, put all three of those together in the early 1970s, and you can imagine the backlash The Exorcist received. Let's start with the death threats. Many of the cast, crew, and production company received death threats. Due to those threats against Linda Blair from nuts who believed that the film glorified Satan, Warner Brothers had bodyguards protecting her for 6 months after the film's release. Upon its initial theatrical release, the film affected many audiences so strongly that at many theaters, paramedics were called to treat people who fainted and others who went into hysterics. You have to remember, it was a different time back then. Even the Reverend Billy Graham claimed an actual demon was living in the celluloid reels of the film itself. Of course, once you see the film, it's very clear that the devil is not portrayed in a positive light by any stretch of the imagination. Despite the studio's fears that the Motion Picture Association of America, or the MPAA, would give the film an X rating, it got an R, with no cuts whatsoever. The MPAA's decision, according to William Friedkin, was that it was a brilliant and intelligent film that deserved to be seen by a wider audience. Regardless, many American cities, such as Washington, D.C. and Boston, chose to disregard the decision and gave it an X. When originally released in the UK, a number of town councils imposed a complete ban on the showing of the film. This led to the bizarre spectacle of Exorcist bus trips, where enterprising travel companies organized buses to take groups to the nearest town where the film was showing. A lot of shock came from how well Linda Blair and Mercedes McCambridge portrayed a possessed young girl. By the way, Mercedes McCambridge did the voice of the possessed Regan. On the first day of filming the exorcism sequence, Linda Blair's delivery of the foul-mouthed dialogue so disturbed the gentlemanly Max von Sydow that he actually forgot his lines. The scene where Regan projectile vomits at Father Karras only required one take, surprisingly. The vomit was intended to hit actor Jason Miller in the chest, but the plastic tubing misfired, hitting him in the face. His reaction of shock and disgust while wiping away the vomit is genuine, and Miller, who played Father Karras, admitted in an interview that he was very angered by this mistake. Mercedes McCambridge, who provided the voice of the demon, insisted on swallowing raw eggs and chain smoking to alter her vocalizations. That's commitment. The actress, who had had problems with alcohol abuse in the past, wanted to drink whiskey as she knew alcohol would distort her voice even more and create the crazed state of mind of the character. As she was giving up on sobriety for this movie, she insisted that her priest be present to counsel her during the recording process. At William Friedkin, the director's direction, McCambridge was also bound to a chair with pieces of a torn sheet at her neck, arms, wrists, legs, and feet to get a more realistic sound of the demon struggling against its restraints. McCambridge later recalled the experience as one of horrific rage. While Friedkin admitted that her performance, as well as the extremes which the actress put herself through to gain authenticity, terrifies him to this day. And if that wasn't spooky enough, if you look closely, there is a real-life serial killer in the movie. I thought this was an urban legend disproven, but here's the story. In the arteriogram scene, the bearded man who assists the doctor is a man named Paul Bateson. He was an actual X-ray tech at NYU Medical Center. In 1979, he was convicted of murdering film critic Addison Verrill and later became the prime suspect in what were known as the Bag Murders, carried out from 1977 through 1978. He bragged about it and was a suspect in the murders of 6 men whom he said he picked up in gay bars, had sex with them, and then murdered and dismembered their bodies and put them in plastic bags, quote, for fun, unquote. 6 male victims were mutilated and dismembered, their remains wrapped in black plastic bags and dumped in the Hudson River. Some of the grisly fragments washed up on the New Jersey shore, others coming to ground near the World Trade Center. These murders were actually the inspiration for another of William Friedkin's films called Cruising, starring Al Pacino. Although investigators believed his story, he was never officially charged, and those murders have technically never been solved. Bateson was released from prison in 2004, and then died in 2012. In the end, not everything related to The Exorcist was doom and gloom and Satanisms. In one scene, Father Karras is interviewing Regan, who was restrained to her bed, and asked Satan,
If you're the devil, why not make the straps disappear?
To which the demon replies,
That's much too vulgar a display of power, Karis.
many years later, this phrase was chosen as the name for the heavy metal band Pantera's greatest album, Vulgar Display of Power. The Exorcist went on to be the highest grossing Warner Brothers film of all time, and the highest grossing R-rated film of all time when adjusted for inflation. The Exorcist is also the first horror film to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. There was some question about who or what possessed Regan, if you ignore the sequels, which is probably for the best. Was it the devil or some demon? The film implies that it might be Puzuzu. Puzuzu's not just a fun name to say, but he's often depicted as a fearsome and monstrous entity, originated from the ancient Assyrian or Babylonian civilizations in Mesopotamia, which is in present-day Iraq. Puzuzu was considered a malevolent deity associated with winds and storms and pestilence. He was believed to be a powerful demon who could bring devastation and affliction upon humanity. Puzuzu was commonly depicted as a combination of animal and human features. He had the body of a man, the head of a lion or a dog, wings of an eagle, and the talons of a bird. His face was often portrayed as having bulging eyes, a hooked nose, and fanged teeth. His monstrous appearance aimed to evoke fear and terror. It's the statue that Father Merrin sees at the beginning of the movie, maybe in both cuts, but definitely in the director's cut. In the end, I really don't think it matters who possessed Regan. It could have been the devil, it could have been one of his lieutenants. If it was Puzuzu, he was surely working on the devil's behalf. The important thing is Regan was possessed by evil and hatred. We should honor her struggle and the sacrifice made by Father Karras and Father Merrin. The Exorcist is an unforgettable classic which raised awareness of the existence of evil forces in the world, while also exploring themes such as faith and devotion. It has many themes that are still relevant today, making it one of the best horror films of all time. Upon rewatching it, I'll admit that it's probably not suitable for modern audiences. They probably wouldn't find it as scary as we did. But I very much enjoyed it, and it scared the hell out of me the first time I saw it. It's also had a huge cultural impact, and is sure to continue inspiring viewers for generations to come, hopefully. Throughout this review, I've referred to biblical verses and other religious texts. By understanding these verses, we can be better equipped to battle against evil forces and protect ourselves from their lure, no matter what religion or if you're even religious at all. Evil is non-denominational. We must maintain an unwavering commitment to our faith and our values in order to stand firm against any attempts by Satan or whatever name you choose to lead us astray. Ultimately, it is only through our faith that we can defeat the enemy. With this knowledge in hand, we can continue on our journey towards righteousness with confidence, knowing that our Creator will guide us through every step of the way. Thank you for watching.